They say silence is the sound of peace. But in my case, it was the sound of something waiting to break. The moment I turned the key in the front door of my lakeside cabin, I felt it. A stillness too perfect. Not serene. Suspended. Like the air was holding its breath, watching me, judging if I truly belonged here. I had spent 20 years designing digital systems that never blinked, working in boardrooms filled with glass, steel, and artifice. In the end, I traded them all for one thing. This cabin. Mine. Paid in full. No mortgage. No meetings. No noisy. Just the slow lapping of the lake and the whisper of pines brushing the sky. It should have felt like a beginning. Instead, it felt like stepping into a chess game mid-match, and I couldn't see the board yet. I didn't even have time to unpack the moving truck before she arrived. I was adjusting the latch on the porch screen when the sharp clack of high heels split the gravel. Each step echoed like a countdown. I looked up. A woman strode down my driveway like she owned the coordinates. Not walked, arrived. She wore a navy blue pantsuit too polished for the woods, tailored like armor. Her clipboard was tucked under one arm like a weapon. Her lipstick was war paint. She didn't smile. She didn't blink. Her heels sank slightly into the earth near the tree line, nature resisting her. "Can I help you?" I asked, blinking in the sunlight. "You're Oliver Reed," she said, not asked. She glanced at the deed folder in my hand. "Willow Lake HOA. I'm Laura Kent, president." She scanned the property like a hawk eyeing prey. Her eyes lingered on the dock, the slope of the hill down to the water, the old oak that hung its branches low over the boathouse. She didn't speak with curiosity. She spoke like she was reciting from a script she'd written herself. "This cabin sits on what we call a shared shoreline," she said flatly. "Community land per our legacy agreements. You'll need to vacate anything past the cedar tree." I blinked. I own to the water line. Deed's clear. Her hand moved fast, pulling out a page that looked like it had been torn from an elementary school project. A hand-sketched map, faded and smudged, with arrows and boundaries drawn in crayon or maybe lipstick. "This is from Walker," she said sharply. "The previous owner. He understood our arrangement." I studied her, then the map, then her again. "Is that his handwriting?" She hesitated, just long enough. The breeze carried a faint scent of lake water and cedar, but it couldn't cover the rising stench of something off. Her pupils darted once, then recentered. Her voice recovered quickly, too quickly. "It's not about handwriting. It's about tradition. This community runs on respect." Walker knew that. "You'll learn." She turned on her heel and began walking away, but not before adding, "Your front step paint isn't HOA compliant. You'll be receiving a notice." "Wait," I called out. "You just got here." She didn't stop. Her voice floated back over her shoulder, perfectly composed. "I've always been here." I stood alone again, deed folder in hand, watching her disappear into the trees like a storm cloud fading into the treeline. My fingers tightened around the papers. I had worked too hard for too long to have someone like her waltz in with a fake map and a forced smile. Something told me this wasn't the first time she'd pulled this routine, and it wouldn't be the last unless I made it. A crow cawed once from the trees. The lake shimmered in the corner of my eye. But the warmth I'd felt an hour ago, the sun, the coffee, the quiet, had drained from the air. This wasn't just a cabin anymore. This was territory, and Laura Kent had just drawn her line in the dirt. She thought I'd be just another file she could close. She had no idea who she was dealing with. By the third day, my mailbox looked like it was throwing up paper. The first envelope arrived the morning after Laura Kent's visit. A folded notice, cream-colored, with a Willow Lake HOA seal that looked like it had been designed by someone with an overinflated sense of order and no actual design skills. The wording was clipped, bureaucratic, and oddly smug. Violation number 001. Non-compliant exterior paint. Front step. Fine. $75. Payable within 10 days. I stared at the paper for a long moment. Then at the step. A weathered shade of forest green. Not bright, not flashy. Just old wood with history. I could almost hear it creak under Charles Walker's boots. Fine, I thought. Maybe she's testing me. But by the end of the week, I knew better, because the fines kept coming. Violation number 002. Unauthorized wind chimes. $100 violation number 003. Grass height exceeds 4.0 inches. $85 violation number 004. Decorative bird feeder. Visual disruption. $50. I read that last one twice. Visual disruption? The bird feeder was made of driftwood. It blended so perfectly with the trees I'd forgotten it was even there. Apparently, Laura hadn't. Each envelope was heavier than the last, as if the ink carried extra malice. There was a rhythm to it, like a machine spitting out punishment on schedule. Every morning, more envelopes. Every page a slap, wrapped in etiquette. I found myself holding my breath before checking the mailbox. Laura never returned in person. She didn't need to. The paper did her speaking. Cold, sharp, and relentless. And that's what unnerved me most. It wasn't just about rules. It was a message. We're watching you. You don't belong. We're going to make sure you know it. I could feel her presence, even when I couldn't see her. Like a security camera hidden behind every pine. Like she was using the bylaws like piano wire, slicing through the calm inch by inch. On the 5th day, I started a spreadsheet. It was habit, really. A reflex from years of debugging software chaos. I logged every fine, every timestamp, every photo I took of my property. I scanned each notice and cataloged it in folders, by type, severity, and cost. I even began measuring my grass daily with a ruler. But this time, I wasn't building a system to keep a company alive. I was building a case. I hadn't spoken to a soul in the neighborhood. Most of them stayed indoors, curtains drawn. A few gave me tight nods in passing, the kind people use when they want to signal empathy but not get involved. Then, one morning, a figure appeared over my side fence. Bent over, sun-worn, and cautious. "Oliver, right?" the man said, not meeting my eyes. "Name's Tim." He motioned toward the lavender in his garden. "Nice to have someone new around." I nodded, hesitant. "Thanks. Been eventful." Tim gave a dry laugh. "That's one word for it." He glanced down the street, then leaned in, voice hushed. "Don't let her get in your head. That woman's been running this place like a fiefdom for years. Most folks just pay the fines and shut up. But Walker, he was different. Drove her crazy." My pulse picked up. "You knew Walker?" Tim hesitated, then nodded slowly. "He built that cabin himself. Said it was more than just a house. Said it was a statement." He looked around again, then added, "He told me before he passed she'd try to claim it. Said he left something behind. Said it would only work if the right person moved in." That was when the air shifted again. Suddenly the notices weren't just petty. They were part of something older. A game already in progress. And I was holding pieces I didn't yet understand. Tim stepped back. "Careful, Oliver. This place, it's not what it seems." And with that, he vanished behind his fence like a ghost ducking back into the fog. I looked down at the latest envelope in my hand. My name printed in perfect, neat letters. The ink still drying. Somewhere, I imagined Laura sipping wine behind her perfectly manicured windows, watching, waiting, convinced I'd fold. She didn't know that I didn't fold. I debug. I build systems. I solve problems. And this was starting to look like the biggest, dirtiest problem of all. The first time I heard Charles Walker's name in an official document, it wasn't from Tim. It was from a sealed envelope buried in a drawer behind the water heater. I wasn't looking for secrets. I was trying to find a shutoff valve after Laura's latest violation notice claimed my hose bib was non-standard. But what I found instead was a folder marked in careful handwriting for whoever comes next. Beneath it, CW, inside were floor plans. Schematics, really. Not just of the cabin, of the land. Layers of foundation diagrams, legal annotations, even aerial views with red outlines around the property boundaries. Attached was a single page with 2 handwritten lines. "The land is the stage. The players will reveal themselves. Greed never looks up. It only reaches forward." My heart pounded. Walker hadn't just built this cabin. He designed it like a weapon. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the wind whispering through the trees, trying to stitch together what he had left behind. It felt less like inheritance and more like assignment. The next morning, I did what I hadn't done yet. I researched Walker. Turns out, he wasn't just a builder. He was a legend in certain circles. An eccentric, a prankster, a quiet genius who used architecture to make moral points. News articles read like folklore. City halls where corrupt officials were soaked by malfunctioning fountains. A courthouse where a certain hallway only echoed footsteps if you were walking with someone else's property. It was performance art in wood and concrete. Walker's final years have been spent in seclusion, fighting the HOA over community claims on his land. The same lies Laura was now feeding me. But he hadn't just fought back. He laid traps. Suddenly, every strange corner of the cabin, every stone in the foundation, felt like a clue. But the real twist came 3 days later from Clara. I'd found her online, a sharp, no-nonsense attorney with a record of dismantling corrupt HOAs. Her office smelled like coffee and controlled chaos. I handed her my folders. She didn't blink at the volume. After an hour of flipping through notices and maps, she looked up and said, "This isn't about bylaws. It's about leverage. Someone wants her land." That was when I told her about the construction schematics. The conservation boundaries Walker had marked out in red. Her expression sharpened. She asked for 2 days. On the third, she called me with something in her voice I hadn't heard since this began: urgency. Oliver, Laura's brother, owns a construction company, Kent Brothers Development. And guess what? They filed a resort permit last year with your property as the only viable access point to the lake. I stopped breathing. She's not trying to enforce community standards, Clara continued. She's trying to clear a path. Your land is the bottleneck. Without it, the resort dies. Everything fell into place. The pressure, the notices, the rush to file a lien. It wasn't about rules. It was about real estate. And then Clara said the words that turned the air to glass. But Walker knew this was coming. Your waterfront is under a federal conservation easement. Filed 8 years ago. Permanent. Untouchable. No development allowed. Any attempt triggers automatic environmental penalties, $10,000 per day. I sat down. You're telling me she's trying to build on protected land? She already is, Clara said. And we have the evidence. Your photos. The documents. The pressure campaign. And if we catch her breaking ground, it's game over. My mind reeled. All this time I thought I was reacting. But I wasn't. I'd been recruited. Walker didn't sell me this land for peace and quiet. He passed me the match, the spark, the fuse. I was his final play. The architect had set the trap, and Laura Kent was walking straight into it. I didn't need the motion alerts from my cabin security system to know something was wrong. I felt it the moment I turned into my driveway and saw the tire tracks. Deep, fresh grooves, too wide for sedan. Construction grade. And they cut straight across my lawn, toward the protected slope near the water. I left the groceries in the car and sprinted down the hill, heart hammering. There they were, 3 men in high-vis vests, standing around a newly installed post. Measuring tape stretched from tree to tree. One was holding a blueprint. Another had a small auger already drilling into the earth. And in the middle of them, Laura Kent. Clipboard under her arm, sunglasses perched like a crown, issuing instructions with the bored efficiency of someone managing an office renovation instead of orchestrating a federal crime. I stopped dead in my tracks. They hadn't even knocked. "Hey," I shouted. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Laura didn't flinch. She turned slowly, already rehearsed. "Mr. Reed," she said smoothly, "you were notified. The community easement allows for minimal site assessment related to future improvements." I nearly laughed. There is no easement. This land is under federal conservation protection. You're violating it right now. One of the workers glanced up, visibly uneasy. "Ma'am, is that true? This is protected land." Laura's jaw tightened. "We have conditional approvals pending." "No, you don't," I snapped. "And unless you want to be personally liable for environmental destruction, I suggest you stop drilling and get the hell off my property." Still, she didn't move. Instead, she walked toward me slowly, heels crunching over soil, I suddenly realized she'd never seen his earth, only his asset. "You're making a mistake," she said, voice low. "You think this is about rules? It's bigger than that. This community has needs. My brother's company is ready to deliver something that'll lift this whole area. You think a cabin and a lake view matter more than what we're building?" I didn't answer, because I was watching the worker behind her. He was slowly backing away from the auger, lifting his phone, dialing. And when he made eye contact with me, he gave a tiny nod. Laura followed my gaze and turned, just in time to see the man stop drilling and say, "I'm calling the county inspector. This doesn't feel legal." She spun back toward me, mask cracking. "You don't understand what you're playing with, Oliver." "No," I said, stepping closer. "You don't." I reached into my jacket and handed her a single piece of paper, a photocopy of the Federal Conservation Easement file by Charles Walker. Signed, sealed, time-stamped. I suggest you read that very carefully, because every inch you trespass carries a price tag. Laura's hand trembled slightly as she took the page, but her face was locked in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You think this ends with paperwork?" she whispered. "You think you can embarrass me in front of this town and walk away clean?" I looked past her. Tim was standing at the top of the hill. So was Mrs. Patterson, and the Rodriguez twins, and the Harris family. Word had gotten out, and for the first time, I realized I wasn't fighting this alone. "No," I said, "I don't think this ends with paperwork. I think it ends with consequences." That's when the sheriff's cruiser pulled into the drive. Laura's eyes widened, followed by the county environmental inspector. Then Clara's gray sedan pulling in behind them, my lawyer stepping out like justice wrapped in confidence. The workers backed away from the posts. Laura stood frozen, still holding the easement copy. I didn't say another word. I didn't need to. She had already crossed the line. And now, the land and everything Walker planned was ready to answer. Laura Kent stood on my protected shoreline, eyes darting like she was calculating exits from a room filling with smoke. The sheriff adjusted his belt as he stepped between us. His voice was calm but firm. "Ma'am, I need you to step away from that fence post. You're on protected conservation land without permit or authorization." Laura didn't move. For a moment, her body locked, jaw tight, shoulders drawn back, chin high, like a queen refusing to surrender the throne. But her voice cracked. "This is a misunderstanding," she said. "This is all supposed to be handled internally." "You can't." Clara stepped forward, legal folder in hand. "It's not internal anymore, Mrs. Kent. It's criminal. Federal law doesn't bend for HOA preference." She handed the sheriff a second folder, filled with GPS-stamped photographs, copies of every fine Laura had issued me. The resort permit applications her brother had filed under a shell company, and the signed easement agreement Charles Walker had locked into place 8 years ago. Everything connected. Every thread, every lie. Laura looked from Clara to me, her lips twitching with fury. "This is a setup," she hissed. "He's working with Walker. This whole thing was engineered." "You're not wrong," I said softly. And it was true. I was just the final piece of the late architect's masterstroke. A vessel for justice, a scalpel in the hand of a man too principled to let corruption win, even after death. The environmental inspector stepped forward now, reading a digital pad. "You violated 4 clauses of federal code, Mrs. Kent. Attempted unauthorized development on protected land. No permits. No exemptions. You've exposed the HOA to millions in liability." A small gasp rippled up the hill. Because the crowd had grown. Neighbors, dozens of them. They stood behind Tim and Mrs. Patterson, watching from the tree line and gravel path, witnesses to the collapse of a tyrant. And that's when Laura snapped. "You think any of this matters?" she shouted, spinning toward the crowd. "You think any of you are safe without me holding this community together? I built this place. I made it livable." A beat of silence. Then Mrs. Patterson stepped forward. "You made it fearful." She held up a letter, yellowed and folded 100 times. Her $200 fine for having a mailbox that was too cheerful. It fluttered in her trembling hands like a flag. Tim stepped forward too. You find me $100 for planting sunflowers. He laughed, bitter and tired. Said they were too tall. Said they were disrupting symmetry. Others followed, one by one, a chorus of quiet fury, a community rediscovering its voice. You removed my daughter's swing set. You tried to put a lien on my house over a garden gnome. You made my wife cry over wind chimes. And then someone held up my packet. The one Clara and I had distributed anonymously. The one that showed every violation, every receipt, every lie. Laura's face twisted. Her voice was manic now, unraveling at the edges. Walker promised me that land, she shrieked. He said it would be ours, for the community. No, I said. He said greed would always reveal itself. And he was right. The sheriff stepped beside her. Mrs. Kent, you'll need to come with us. For questioning. The moment her hands were gently guided behind her back, she stopped struggling. But she did turn toward me. Her voice dropped to a whisper only I could hear. You haven't won. You're just part of his game. And it's not over. Then she was gone, loaded into the cruiser, driven down the hill, past the people she once ruled with threats disguised as policy. The sun broke through the trees then, casting light across the ruined fence line. The posts half buried in Walker's protected land, silent now, like gravestones. And for the first time since I arrived at Willow Lake, the land felt still, not empty, free. 3 weeks after Laura Kent was removed from office, the community gathered under the cedar canopy for the first open HOA meeting in years. No fees, no glares, no threats hidden behind legalese. Just folding chairs, coffee in paper cups, and cautious smiles from neighbors who were learning how to breathe again. The new board, volunteers, not opportunists, passed a motion to formally preserve the lakeside property as protected public space. A monument would be installed beneath the old oak, bearing Charles Walker's name, and one line engraved beneath it. He built not just a home, but a shield. I didn't speak during the meeting. I just watched. It wasn't my victory to claim. I was just the hammer. The architect was the hand. Afterward, Mrs. Patterson placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. It's peaceful again, isn't it? I nodded. But it wasn't just peaceful. It was still, like the land had finally exhaled. Back at the cabin, the sun was dying into the lake, casting ribbons of fire across the water. I sat on the dock, a beer in hand, listening to the wind catch in the reeds. The air smelled of pine and possibility. A small locked box sat on the deck beside me, one I'd found nailed into a hidden compartment in the cabin floor beneath the fireplace. The key had been tucked inside a hollow log outside the cabin, sealed in wax, wrapped in oilskin, marked only with my name. Inside the box, a single envelope, and a flash drive. The letter was handwritten. Oliver, if you're reading this, then she tried. And you stood your ground. People like Laura always underestimate silence. They forget that land listens. That one remembers. They talk about power, but they never ask where it comes from. This cabin was never about escape. It was about legacy. Not mine. Yours. You're the one who saw through her, who debugged the lie, like code unraveling. That's why I picked you. Not for your fight, but for your stillness. The right storm needs the right wall. The flash drive contains recordings, meetings, conversations. She knew I recorded everything. She just never thought anyone would know where to find them. You don't have to use them. But if she comes back, you'll know what to do. CW, I sat there long after the stars came out, holding that flash drive like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I didn't plug it in. Not yet. I didn't need to. Not tonight. Some stories end not with a bang, but with a choice. And I chose silence. Because for now, she was gone. The power was broken. The community was healing. But I couldn't shake her final words, whispered through clenched teeth before she disappeared behind cruiser glass. You haven't won. It's not over. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe Walker knew that too. Maybe that's why he chose someone like me. Someone who would wait. Not strike. Not rage. Wait. Because people like Laura always come back. They just forget the land remembers. And when they do, they'll find the dock exactly as it was. The cabin standing firm. And me, waiting, still as stone. just like Walker designed.